Welcome back to the Wake Man channel. Alright, this video is going to be the 30th episode of the Wakeboat ownership series. And in this video, I'm going to discuss my thoughts on whether or not you should pitch in for boat time, or whether or not everybody should share the cost of enjoying time on a boat. Now, in my years of experience with boating, whether it be on a wake boat, an inboard-outboard boat, fishing, jet skis, or wave runners, it seems like this subject is a very controversial one. And so much so that I fully expect to receive comments on this video where it's obvious that the people making the comment have not even watched the video, because they see the subject in the title of the video and they just feel compelled to say something about it right away without even reading into it. But that's okay. That happens all the time on my channel, and I'm perfectly fine with it. And actually, unbeknownst to those people, they're only helping my videos, so I welcome it. And although I'd rather they watch my video, I still welcome their comments. So to start out with, I think that a lot of how we perceive this sharing of the cost when we're out enjoying time on the water, no matter what we're doing, whether it's on a boat or a wave runner or what have you, I think a lot of our perception is kind of based on how we were raised, or any experiences that we've had out on the water. For example, if you were raised in a family that had a boat and you were always out on the water, and your family always took people out and never made anybody pay, and if somebody tried to pay or pitch in, your family would say, hey, no, this is on us. You know, if you grew up in that type of an environment, I'm going to guess that that's your opinion on it, is that you don't think that people need to pay to enjoy the fun with you. And I definitely don't think that's wrong. I think it's different for everybody, and I'm simply going to share my opinions on it. And just to give you a little basis of my perspective, my family never really owned a boat other than a few small fishing boats. And fishing is something I like doing at different periods of my life, but I've always been more into the water sports activities as opposed to fishing. And I've also owned a couple wave runners myself, but keep in mind, as I got to my adulthood and I got my wave runners and then moved on to boating, I did not have anything to base it off of, because we weren't going out on other people's boats really. I could probably count all the times I went out on somebody else's boat on one hand before I bought my own wave runners. So that's kind of the basis I started with. Now, once I bought a pair of wave runners, I started encountering a whole scenario where, you know, I found myself paying for, you know, $100 worth of fuel for the day for, you know, me and a friend or me and a group of friends to go out and hang out on my wave runners. And then, you know, you'd have a friend that was disappointed when it ran out of gas. And myself, I sit back thinking, well, you know, you didn't even pay for any gas, so why would you be disappointed? But it's just the way things go. I think it's good to kind of understand people's perspective. So when I started going out on some friends' boats on a regular basis, so this was before I had a boat, but I did have wave runners at the time, I would always pitch in automatically. I understood the cost of fuel, both for the use of the boat and getting the boat to the lake, and I kind of had the perspective of I don't feel right kind of going out and having fun on somebody else's boat and then taken off without even giving any money to that person, because I know how much it costed. You know, like I said, it cost me $100 or so to go play with my wave runners, and that was relatively cheap. And a lot of times the people that I was going out with, I would say at least half the time, they weren't worried about collecting any money from anybody. Even if they would refuse taking money from me, I would put it in their glove box or put it somewhere where they would find it. Because I just didn't feel right. You know, I'm the type of person that I like to feel like I don't owe anybody. So it was just something to keep my mind right. And I don't blame them if they weren't trying to collect from anybody else. I also did not care whether or not I was the only one paying to pitch in. It was more or less to make me feel good about the situation, that I wasn't taking advantage of a friend or something like that. So that's kind of my stance on it. But again, I don't think that there's any particular way of doing things that is wrong. I think whatever you feel is right is and you're comfortable with and is best for you, I think that is the correct way to do it. I'm merely explaining my perspective and why I do the things that I do. So once I bought a boat and I started bringing out people on that boat, I would say at first I wasn't critical about people pitching in, but I liked being out on the water as much as possible. I mean, I was trying to get on the water pretty much every weekend, multiple days per weekend, whenever I could. I just loved being out on the water. And that's what developed my passion for wakeboarding and wake boats later on. So that being said, it became very clear to me pretty quickly, if I continued taking out friends, and we all rode behind the boat for that day, and I didn't make sure people were pitching in, then essentially I would not be able to afford to go out as often as I wanted to. Now, I had lots of good times with lots of good people in that scenario, but it also made it to where basically I might be able to go out as half the time, maybe even a third of the time that was possible for a given season based on the amount of money that I had available to spend on it. So that's when I decided, hey, you know, I love having lots of people on the boat. I love everybody having fun, but it became important to me to make sure that everybody was paying for their time on the boat. That way we were all splitting the costs and we were all equally having fun, and that way we could all have more fun together. And I found that actually, you know, inadvertently sort of weeded out some friends. And I'm by no means saying that it got rid of friends that were taking advantage of me. Sometimes it was simply the fact that people just couldn't afford to come out, but they were still good friends. But it was important to me to go out as much as I could, and the only way I could do that is if everybody was pitching in for time. And I would say within about a half season into owning my first boat, I got to a point where if I invited people out or if somebody wanted to come out, I would start off by making them aware that, hey, you're going to have to pitch in for time. This is about the amount it'll be, and all I was doing was taking, you know, typical costs of gas and splitting it up. But I'd always make sure I split it up equally between everybody that was out. And at that point in time, I was simply taking the cost of fuel for the truck for the day and the cost of fuel for the boat for the day. And at the end of the day, I would just divide it by all of us. That actually helped things out. I was able to make sure I could go longer in the season. I felt like it was funner in certain ways. It did, again, like I said, there were certain people that didn't come out anymore or didn't come out as often. I think mostly because they may not be able to afford it, or maybe they just didn't think it was worth it. I'm not sure. Now, again, I'm not saying that's the correct way to do it. That was just what was working for me at the time. Since then, things have changed quite a bit because I've actually budgeted my life more around boating. And so every season that comes up, I know I'm going to be spending somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 on fuel, and that doesn't even take into consideration anybody else coming on the boat. That's just how much time I spend riding behind the boat. It wasn't but a few years after that point that I had gotten my budget down to a science to where I could go the whole season, even if nobody came out on the boat, and it was just me and my wife. I could go the whole season and get out as much as I wanted to, and I could still afford it. So then it became more of a deal where, you know, it's just fair for everybody if everybody pitches in. So I just didn't want to be screwing somebody else. You know, if one friend wanted to pitch in and another friend did not want to, I didn't want to be screwing the person that was pitching in. So then it became more important to me that just everybody pitches in just to be fair to everybody. So I've been doing that for lots of years. I would say for at least 8 years, I did it that way. And then I just recently, in the last couple years, changed it up a little bit because there was a situation happening that I feel like might have been scaring people away because they just didn't feel like it was worth it. And that is where there'd be people on the boat that were just hanging out on the boat, weren't doing anything behind the boat. And I was having everybody chip in. So my philosophy on that was, even if you're sitting on the boat, you're chipping in. And it wouldn't be much, but it would be something. And I feel like a lot of people didn't think that was worth it. And my intention was not to scare those type of people off. And I don't think I necessarily did that. But in the last few years, I decided that if they're just riding on the boat, then, they're not costing me hardly any money. Unless they want to do something specific. For example, go down the canyon when I normally wouldn't go down the canyon that day. All I care about is those people that are riding behind the boat a lot, because if there's people that like to surf a lot or people that like to wakeboard a lot, that can chew through the fuel. So most recently, I've started to only have those people that are riding behind the boat pitch in for fuel. So that's been my experience with pitching in for boat fuel, and that's my kind of opinion on it. I do think that if you're worried about your friend who owns a boat, that you like to be out on that boat and riding behind that boat, I do think that if you are worried about getting out on the boat as much as you can, then it's probably in your best interest to make sure that you're always pitching in, and that boat owner does not even have to ask you to pitch in, because that will likely make it to where that boat owner thinks of you. If they want somebody out on their boat, they'll think of you first. So I do think that's a good idea. I also think it's a good idea for those same people who really want to get out on somebody's boat as often as possible, to just be super supportive on the boat. Help them with anything. And I do have good friends that like to come out on the boat sometime that are very respectful and supportive that way, and it makes a difference. Again, that the boat owner is going to probably think of you first. So those are things that help out. Now, if you are a boat owner that you just like to have people out on the boat and you like to share your boat, you like people to come out and have a good time, you don't want them to worry about paying for anything, I think that's perfectly fine. It simply has not been something that has worked for me in my years of owning a boat so far. Might I change my mind about that at some point in time? I think that's possible. I'm not saying that I will always make everybody pitch in for their time behind the boat. I'm simply saying I'm doing what I think is best for my situation right now. So again, I know this subject is a controversial one, and I know there's probably people that have decided to watch this video just want to see whether or not I'm for pitching in or against pitching in. And I'm sorry if I've disappointed you, but again, I feel like it totally depends on your situation, and I don't think there's one particular way that is totally wrong. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any thoughts on this video or ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. And if you are new to the channel, please subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you can be notified of my future videos. I'll see you next week.